How's it going, everybody? Today we are outside where it's hot. It's already 90 degrees here in North Texas, and we are going to be replacing our Livescope, our LVS32 transducer, with a new Livescope Plus. So there's going to be some steps involved. Maybe you bought your boat and it already had Livescope on it and you want to upgrade the new transducer. Then we're going to quickly walk through kind of the components that we're going to be swapping out. You don't have to swap out everything, but a good amount of it. And we'll talk through what's in the box of the Livescope to get you familiar with that and kind of get a game plan together. Then we'll walk through some of the steps. So let's get into it. The setup we have is an LVS32 transducer with a fish obsessed 0 degree mount. This is all ultimately going to end up on my other boat. Runs up the length of the trolling motor and comes through here on the boat. Goes through this bulkhead and into my rod locker here that I don't really use. And this is our GLS10 box. You do not have to swap this out. I'm going to go ahead and do it because my new box, I noticed a couple differences on it. But you do need to run this transducer cable. This goes directly to the LVS32. You've got to get this guy out. And that should be it. These connections should all be the same. Once you get it mounted up and routed on the trolling motor, you'll be good to go. So let's take a look at what's in the box. In the box, this is brand new from Garmin. We have our GLS10 black box, as you probably know it as. This is a new one. Like I said, there's some subtle differences, and really the only one I've really noticed is this guy's blue and the other one's not blue. The other one is 3 years older, this one is 3 years newer. So I'm going to go ahead and swap it out to make sure that my new transducer and my new black box are all together in a happy family. But if you're just updating just the transducer, you do not have to, as long as your GLS10 box is up to date. Also in here we have the transducer itself. So this guy here will go on your trolling motor on your pole, and this guy here will go all the way to your black box wherever it may be. That is the transducer. We've got our network adapter cable. Not going to need this today. This is the extension to that. These both go between your network source and your black box. I already have those on the boat, so these will go to the old boat, the other boat. This is the perspective mount. So if you're interested in using perspective mode, and it lets you move between perspective down and forward. Somewhere there's another piece in here. This guy here. So this is your backer. It comes with the front end. It's got an arrow for pointing up. And then you've got this bracket here that will bolt to it. I am not going to use this for a couple of reasons. One, I don't like perspective mode. I don't use it. I've tried it a few times. Maybe my opinion will change, but ultimately I want to end up with another fish obsessed 0 degree mount. They're just not available. They're like, they don't exist. So they're obviously doing well with that, maybe struggling with manufacturing a little bit, but hopefully they can get that scaled up and that problem solved. But this is the perspective mount. I'm going to keep it because, you know, maybe one day I want perspective mount on there, just not today. The way we're going to go with it is with the barrel mount, and this goes on the head of the trolling motor. And the reason why I'm going to try this is mostly because this still has an 8 degree cant to it, but I can cheat it around the barrel of the motor to get it to 0 degrees. So it's kind of like a poor man's 0 degree if I can get it completely parallel to my trolling motor shaft. So I'm going to try it that way. It's very susceptible to damage down there on the barrel head, so I don't like that. But you know, until I can get a fish obsessed mount, we're going to go with this until I have a reason not to. It comes with a giant hose clamp that goes around it, goes onto your barrel, just like that. Also included is a power cable with a fuse. Don't need that, that'll go on my other boat. And what else we have here? We have various knobs, Allen key. This looks like another mount. This is just a traditional mount for non-perspective. Some supplemental hardware. We've got a ferrite bead. So the ferrite bead will go around your transducer cable to help reduce any radio frequency interference. And then lastly, we have our 2 O-rings and our 2 clamps, nuts essentially, that will go to our network cable. These are not on there, so you can route it and then you put them on there when you're done. Other than that, we've got some GLS10 screws, and then if all else fails, we have instructions. So we're going to try and get along without that, and without further ado, let's start taking stuff apart. All right, so that didn't take very long. That took probably, I don't know, 10 minutes or so to get that torn down that far. I've got the transducer off of the trolling motor itself. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to pull this wire out of the boat and pull it out towards me. Now, when you do that, we're going to tie this string to the end of it. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a string in the rod locker and a string out here. We're going to tie the string to the new transducer and pull it straight back through, so there's got to be a lot less fishing. You pretty much already have your path back to where you started. Always a good thing to do when you're pulling old wires and replacing it or whatever that is. It's a super handy tip. And you can either tie it on there or you can kind of tie it and do electrical tape to make sure that wire or the string sticks to your wire. And let's go ahead and knock that out. Hopefully we got room here to get this transducer head through here. We've got a couple other wires going through this hole, but we won't know until we try it. All right, show you what I'm working with. Okay, so we got our box here. We're gonna take this guy, our transducer off, and we've got a multitude of zip ties and stuff that we're gonna have to clip out of the way. We've got our NEMA 2000 network here for my Steadicast sensor, and so we're just gonna have to pull this guy through wherever he may be. And like I said, we're gonna take the string, tie the string to the end of this guy and pull it through. And we'll see if we can fit it. It's gonna be close. I'm just gonna do an overhand knot. And we'll do a couple reps of tape. All right, let's go back up, see if we can get it through. All right, so we did get it. Took a little more finagling than I'd once thought, but we did get it. And it's all the way through, so now we can just take off our string and get rid of our old transducer. There's that, and we are free. All right, so we got our old transducer out. We're gonna take all of this now and set it out of the way. Now, after you get to this point, you got your old one out of the way, you wanna start to install it like a reverse order. So you're gonna start from the trolling motor and work your way back. And what that's gonna do is make sure your routing and your cable ends up where you want it, and you don't need to pass it through something, but yet you've already routed it. So we're gonna start working our way backwards. But the first thing I'm gonna do to help in routing is I'm gonna take some side cutters to my brand new cable. Now, there's a method to my madness. So this guy comes with this nut on here, and it's quite a bit bigger than the rest of the cable. And so the intention there is it is removable to some extent because it comes with new ones. So if you've installed like a regular transducer before, you're probably familiar with these, but these are like a clamshell nut. And so what we're going to do is we will cut off this fixed nut, clip it off with some side cutters. Once we route it, then we'll put this clip back on there with the O-ring, and we'll be good to go. That's going to help us route it through some of the trolling motor features as well as through this hole in the boat. That's kind of what I had some trouble with getting it back out. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. I've not done this before, but we're going to act like we have. Do not clip any pins. I'm just going to kind of break it off in chunks here. See if we can start to break it off like that. Now that's out of the way, I'm going to pull this O-ring aside so we don't lose it and put it with my other ones. So now that's ready to route. Make sure you don't damage these pins when you're moving it through. And the first thing we're going to do is try to set up our barrel mount. Now, I did mention if all else fails, we will look at the instructions. I do want to double check the orientation since this one does look a little bit different than my LVS32. So I have a starboard mount. I'm going to mount it on top of that, which is the starboard side of the boat. And with that in mind, on the barrel mount, the wire is going to go aft. So it's going to look like this. And you want this, you have three elements, this element, this middle element, and this element. And ultimately, when it's like this middle one will be parallel to the water surface. So it will sit kind of like that on the trolling motor. You'll see it when we get done. So let's go ahead and get our barrel mount set up. All right, so we have the barrel mount. We're going to stick this piece of rubber behind it, and the hose clamp will go around it as such. Now when you install these hose clamps, we're going to try to position it so that it doesn't have a sharp edge looking at me. And the rationale behind that is so it doesn't like damage my boat cover or anything. So I kind of want this sharp edge pointing down. Is kind of how we're going to go with it, and see if we can make that work. Once I get it snugged up, I'll show you what we're doing. This is an 8mm 5/16 nut driver. We'll get it snugged up, Now I'm not going to go too crazy with this yet because I'm going to mess with it. So here's what we're looking at. So this is the barrel mount. Now you should set it up so it's square, so it's perpendicular, but it does have an 8-degree cant to it, which is going to kind of angle your image. I'm going to see if I can cheat it. And so basically I'm going to move this down and get that offset to try and get it perfectly parallel. You see how that's not parallel to the shaft? We're going to move it down and see if we can cheat it once we get it all set up. Something like that. Now that's not super exciting with how close that is. We got to make sure we route that out of the way. Just a starting point. I'm going to try to get a rough reading on this. Call it 2 degrees. And so we're going to translate, I guess, 2 degrees to this flat surface. 2. So we're going to say that those are in parallel planes, which it looks pretty good there. And we're going to go ahead and snug that up for now. You don't have to go crazy on the tightness. You're still going up against plastic. Snug it up there. And then we got to make sure our routings get all the way out of the way. So one little trick you can do, so if you're trying to wrap it around there, you can wrap some tape around your screwdriver. This is now your new smaller spool. We're going to cut that off because electrical tape really doesn't like to get pulled. And once we get it started, now it fits in here. Go all the way around a couple times. See, you're learning all kinds of tricks if you didn't know that one. Yeah, we do want to make sure that we're routing it around this. So I've got this pulled tight so it stays out of the way of my propeller, but I also have my strap that comes over. So I don't want my cable running on top here. So I have it running on the forward edge. We're going to run it on the forward edge and then bring it back up so it clears. So we're going to do another tape and then probably a tape on top and run it up the length of the shaft. All right, so just a tiny change of plans. Ended up kind of reworking this a little bit. I am going to have it run under the shaft here. I didn't really want to do that at first because it puts it closer to this little support dealy whopper, but I feel better with it going this way. I didn't have this problem with my 0 degree because it was mounted here, so I didn't actually start routing it till up here. And so I've got this tied down, so when this goes all the way down, it's close, but it's got a finger's clearance all the way around, and that really shouldn't have any relative movement in between them. So now from here, what we are going to do is we're going to run our cord back under. This is why you want to do this now. Through our routing hole here. Okay, got that. Do a little more tapage. We're going to start to bring it around here. This is where you want to spend your time because you do not want to cut this wire. And that would be no bueno. I like to make a fatter wrap rather than just a skinny one. Helps give that tape a little more stability. And always cut your electrical tape. If you pull it, it screws up the adhesion. And so from here, it's going to come up through our routing aid. So from here, we could start routing it back down. And we're actually going to come around the back here and use this other routing aid that's on the force to get it back down. And let me see if I can show you that. So this is the other routing aid. It's this guy right here. And this is ultimately why we took this off, so we can put this guy in there. It will not fit with that thing on there. So now that's coming through, we'll run that down and snake it back around. This is the lengthy process, unfortunately. Got to make sure you route all this stuff right the first time so you don't have any pinch problems and you don't wreck your brand new transducer because you watched some guy on YouTube. Okay, so now we're at the point where we start to run our transducer wire down into the boat, into the black box. We are going to try to use the string that we pulled earlier. We've got the string. Let's see if we grab the right one. All right, what we're actually doing is we're pulling it weird. It's trying to come through sideways. So I'm going to go ahead and tape this so it's straight. So we pull it straight through. I should have known that. You want it to pull the end through the hole, not the side of it. Here we'll try it again. Got it. Okay, we are through the transducer cable. And then we're kind of well on our way. You liked how gracefully I got back up? All right, we're getting there. Okay, so now's the point where we start putting this cable in back together. Remember, we cut this off. That was really scary. All right, this is the point where you put our O-ring back on. Try not to roll it. Do not forget it. Got our threads going up there and our threads going up there. And it should just click together. Trying to make sure that clicks, double clicks on there. And now we have a threaded fitting back on there. Let's go ahead and plug that in. Oh, you know what? We're actually going to swap out our box. Just these two. There's that. And here's a new one. You can see that guy's blue. I don't know why it's blue, but it's kind of bothering me that it's blue. So we're going to put it on the new one. Okay. And we're going to plug everything back in. Put my ferrite choke back on. Don't want to forget that. We are installed. The only thing we lack is some real minor cleanup work. Okay. I think that's it. So we are fully installed. Basically all we have to do is we're going to do a little bit of cleanup work on the wiring here, zip ties and stuff, and we are going to power up our graph and make sure it sees it. So hopefully you found that helpful and you learned maybe a couple little tips and tricks about installing stuff in your boat. We're going to go ahead and get it powered up, make sure everything works, and we'll have some follow-up videos on what we think of the LVS32 over the 34. So stay tuned for those. Like and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.